Strong Enough merch is now available. Go to strongenoughpod.com and check out all the stuff that you can get so that you'll have those daily reminders that you are strong enough and you are worth it. Welcome to the Strong Enough podcast, where we talk about the challenges and celebrate the triumphs of people just like you. I'm your host, Claudia. Today we have a 3-time repeat guest. On this episode, she's going to discuss her journey with chronic illness, and she's going to give you some great advice on how you can better advocate for yourself and do research that's actually beneficial. Please help me welcome Jenn DeBeers. Jenn, how are you today?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I'm excited to see your face yet again for the 3rd time on the podcast. You are the first 3rd-time guest.
Woohoo!
I feel like there should be applause or something right now. I don't know, but you know what this tells me about you is that you just have some amazing shit to talk about in all different areas of life. And so that's kind of why we're here today. We're going to delve into a topic that we chatted a little bit about on your first episode, but we're going to really dig into it today. So for anybody who's under a rock and hasn't seen your first 2 episodes, why don't you give us a little something about Jenn?
All right. Well, I have a sports medicine background. I owned a personal training business for a while and did that, and then transitioned in the sports marketing world. And so that's what I currently do for a living. Is I work for a marketing agency doing, they call it experiential marketing, but I do experiences for big companies. I'm in the production aspect of it, and grew up in New Hampshire, then moved to North Carolina, and that's how I met you. Was living in North Carolina in Greensboro. And I have an abusive background, from a childhood, and dealt with an alcoholic household as well, very toxic, and learned to overcome that and heal from that. And now this is where we are.
This is where we are. And you've been through a lot, and I know that a lot of those things have shaped who you are today. You have overcome a lot of things. Now, one of the things that a lot of people mentioned in both of the first 2 episodes, because we do this audio and video, is they were very enamored with your hair. So for those of you who are,
I should have put it down today.
It's up today, but that's okay. For those of you who can't see, Jenn has the most amazing red hair. It's thick, it's luscious, it's gorgeous. It's kind of enviable, but there was a time when that was not the case. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So Why don't you jump in and talk about the days that your hair revolted against you and left?
Yeah. So in 2018, I got really sick. I had a sinus infection, and I was on antibiotics for, I think it was about 4 months, 9 different ones, and ended up having to have surgery. And then as soon as I had my surgery and came off of those antibiotics, I started having some major stomach problems, and eventually was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And so I had lost, it was almost 50 pounds in 6 weeks. And so then I kind of started on the path to learning. I had no idea, I'd never had an autoimmune disease, had no idea what Crohn's disease was. All I knew is that it was a digestive problem. And so I really tried to work on that with natural healing. I was not able to do that, so I had to go on medication as well. And I was so sick that I didn't pay attention to the other aspects that my body was going through. Like, for example, I stopped having my period. And that was due to being so malnourished and anemic. And I had noticed that my hair was starting to fall out, but it was kind of on the back burner. I was again so sick. I couldn't keep food down. I couldn't keep food in. So that was, I got diagnosed in July. So I got sick in May of 18, diagnosed in July. So probably by about September, I noticed, I mean, I was filling the toilet with my hair. And those that have curly hair know this. Those that don't might not know this, but your hair just gets knotted. It's curly. It's constantly like it is. So like just brushing it, and it was just falling out by literally the clumps. And because it was falling out and so curly, it was just so knotted. It was taking me like an hour to just try and get through it. And there was a lot of tears. And in October of 18, I just made the decision of what was left. And I can share pictures of, what my hair looked like before and then during. And I just made the decision what was left of it needed to go, because it was so unmanageable at that point, that I needed to go. And I had like right here was like a huge bald spot. And it lost its color. And it was just an outwardly sign of how sick I had been. My body went into survival mode, and it was like, I mean, you don't need hair to survive. I don't need my period to survive. So it was like my body was just literally trying to use every single resource it had to keep me alive. And there were several instances where I didn't think I was going to survive. Like I went to bed thinking I wasn't going to wake up the next morning. So not to downplay the disease itself, I'm pretty sure I cried more tears over losing my hair than I did of the actual disease. Like, hey, you're diagnosed with this disease for the rest of your life. But as a female, our hair is so, I think next to probably having boobs is literally the next thing to like really embracing being a female. Like our hair is just so important. It's like, especially me, like it was my identity. Like I was known as the curly redheaded girl. Like that's literally was my identity. And I went through a lot. I struggled with it. Not gonna lie. I can joke about it now. But before there was no joking. And I was on the road when it happened, and I was on the road with two guys, and so I sent them a text and was like, I had to cut all my hair off. Please don't say anything or I'm going to cry around you. So it was like this big elephant in the room. Like I'm like driving down the road and I'm just bawling. And my coworker's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
Awkward.
Yeah, very awkward. But then we started playing around with it. Like I had a friend that made me some wigs, and they were different colors. And, so then we just started messing with people. Like our client at the time, hilarious story, but for some reason they thought my name was Jessica. And they kept saying, one day she came up to me and she's like, why are you such a bitch, Jen? And I'm like, I mean, I know I can be, but can you give me an example? I try not to be with clients. And she's like, well, every time we call your name, you don't respond. And I'm like, well, what name are you calling? And she's like, Jessica. And I'm like, well, that's because it's not my name. Wait, what? So that was like the running joke. So when I got my wigs, we acted like I was a different person. Like they're like, oh, Jen left. This is Tiffany. And it literally took them like 30 minutes to realize it was actually me. So I kind of started to embrace it a little bit. I got some fun different wigs, and I'm not going to lie, like I understand why people wear them because, but they're hot. They are so hot. So I wore a wig so I was back in, I think, October of 18 until probably about June of 19. And then my hair had grown back enough that I felt comfortable it was very short, and curly hair, we all know. But I think right now I'm finally at the point now. So, I mean, it's been almost 4 years that it's back down to its original length. It's still not quite as thick as it used to be or as full. But I didn't lose the texture, and I didn't lose the color of it, which is I'm grateful for now. Before, I hated being a redhead, literally hated it as a kid growing up, but like I've embraced it now. And I think I worked a lot with, my identity in that. It could happen again. I could get sick again. And would I be sad about it? Yes. But I don't think I would have the reaction that I had before. It's okay. This is what happened, and how are we to move on from this? I did a lot of work. I did a lot of research on supplements, on how to, what works, what doesn't work. And I can share the document that I have with everything that I did to, get myself healthy again, enough to be able to grow hair. And a lot of it, the major thing was, one, being on prednisone, two, being so now malnourished, and then three, also being so anemic, because you need red blood cells and you need iron to build hair, and protein, the lack of protein. So those were the four major things that I really tried to focus on to get myself healthy enough. And obviously collagen and B12 has a lot to do with it as well too. But yeah, I can share that document with you if you want to share it with the viewers.
That would be amazing. So we are going to talk about kind of some of the things that you did to get your hair and all of you, kind of back into a healthy state. But first, we're going to talk about the crappy side of it. You said you were probably sadder about losing your hair than you were about being diagnosed with this chronic illness that's never going to go away. What is that like to lose something that truly is your identity?
Devastating. I mean, it's like you literally go through an entire mourning process with it. I mean, it's, and I was the healthy person. I was the one that worked out all the time. I owned a gym at one point. So it's not like I wasn't, and then you question, what did I do? Did I cause something to trigger this? And there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of anger. And I do feel like you literally go through an entire mourning process, the anger and the blaming and the sadness, because you did. I mourned the loss of my hair, but I also mourned the loss of my life. Like, it's a distinct, like, I know we talk about pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic. And also for me, it was like pre-Crohn's diagnosis versus post-Crohn's diagnosis. My life is so different now than it was before. I was training to be a bodybuilder, and I wanted to do shows, and I was, squatting 250 pounds. And it's like, now I can't, my body physically can't do it anymore. And I've learned I've learned a lot of grace, which I didn't have. I mean, obviously we all know my company, Suck It Up. It means a little bit different now. Whereas before I would just push through, like, suck it up, just do it. Now it's like, learning my body and knowing my limitations and being okay with, hey, you can't do this right now. And that was probably one of the harder things for me to learn, because I'm one of those, like, let's go hard, push through it kind of people. And I can't always be that person anymore.
What was it like for you to go through the time when you had just been diagnosed, and you're talking about, you went through kind of the whole grief process, the anger, the blaming, etc. How difficult was that for you to go through that entire process? And how long did you sit in that before you said, you know what, I'm not going to let this define me. I'm going to do what I can to get to a place where I'm happy with my life?
I think it was right away. Just because I'm not really one of those people. I was literally on the road. I was working in the middle of all of this too. So it was kind of like, in the back of my head, I was always, it's funny, but I've always been, oh, it's not that bad. Like, I should have gone to the hospital several times. I didn't. So I was like, it's not that bad. Oh, it's not that bad. But I think, yeah, I had moments where I was very upset and, like, I can't do this. And, there was definitely a lot of faith in this whole, like, there are just people that showed up in my life. There was one day I was in so much pain, and I was like, I think I have to go to the emergency room. Let me okay, I was on site setting up a stage for a concert, and the artist pulls me aside and she's like, hey, I don't know why I feel this way, but are you okay? Can I pray for you? And I'm like, okay. And she did. We sat there in front of everybody and just prayed, and my pain subsided, and I was able to finish the day. Now it came back. Um, but I see glimpses of that throughout this whole process. And I think we all have those. For me, it was just it was a day. Like sometimes I had to take it hour by hour, um, day to day. And it was like, okay, if today's a bad day, it's a bad day. But I don't think I ever really just was like completely wallowing in it. It was like, okay, this is my reality now. I was in denial at first. I kept telling the doctor, no, you're kidding. I'm not, I don't have Crohn's disease. It doesn't run in my family. But then, the more research I did, and also the more people that I found in like the fitness industry that had it, that had overcome it. There were figure competitors and bodybuilders. There's pro basketball players that have it. So that kind of gave me hope too, is that you can lead a normal life. You can also lead an elite athletic life with this. There are adjustments, and yes, there's a possibility that you won't be in remission and you'll get sick again, and we go into what we call a flare. So that really helped me too, knowing that there were people that had overcome this and that had worked with it with their life. It didn't have to be a complete detriment to how I wanted to live my life. Now, yes, there's been some changes, obviously dietary changes, but relatively normal. My normal is coming back. I'm not completely there yet. I mean, there's definitely days, the fatigue can get to you really badly. I deal with a lot of inflammation. I mean, that's what it is. It's inflammatory bowel disease, but it's also inflammation throughout the entire body. Stress is a huge factor. That's one thing I have really, really worked on, is that protect your peace. And I can't get stressed out because it literally causes me to get sick. So it's evaluating things like, is this worth my energy? Is it not? Like really working on prayer and meditation and getting rid of toxic people in my life. That was another major thing too. And I think, again, it doesn't matter if they're family or not. Like if you're toxic, you're toxic. And I've probably gotten way more aggressive with that if you don't contribute to my peace in my life, you can't be in my life on a consistent basis. Because if I do go into a flare, it could take months for me to come out of it. And it's not fun. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
Yes, I love that you said protect your peace. I think that's probably going to be the motto of the episode. I feel like there is a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's a great book. And it talks about how trauma and emotional things can affect your body. And that's kind of what I picked up on with what you said, is how, one thing that was going on with you caused these other external symptoms or consequences. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because I feel like your situation and your experience isn't just for people who have Crohn's. I have a bladder disease, and I can relate because stress is something that definitely affects me pretty significantly as well too. And same scenario, you can go into a flare and who knows how long that's going to last. So what I want to talk about though is some of the things that you've done to address the outside factors that you've experienced from your chronic illness. So how did we get our hair back? How do we get some of our energy levels back? What are some things that people can do to better their overall health and wellness, even when they're struggling with a chronic illness?
Okay, yeah. So for me, I'm a firm believer in Eastern and Western medicine. I feel like we can use the best of both of them and use them together to better our lives. I mean, modern medicine has made some amazing contributions and saved lives, but also Eastern medicine has been around for thousands of years. Um, so I tried to do both. Again, I tried to do everything naturally at first, and it just, for me, it didn't work. There was so much damage, and it was so severe that I just wasn't going to get there on my own. But, again, it's, for me, I've cut out as much process as I can. I can't stress this enough. And I heard this was years ago. I'm a huge Jillian Michaels fan.
Mhm.
And I read one of her books, and she talks about, she thinks the reason why we have such a high concentration or high uptake, I guess, in cancer and autoimmune diseases is because of what we've been putting in our body. Like, what we eat as Americans is not food. It's food stuff. I mean, it's chemicals, it's crap, it's not real food anymore. We've modified things so badly. And I think that's also part of the reason why we've seen such a huge increase in supplements, because 100 years ago, people had their own farms and they got their food fresh from the ground. But now we go to the grocery store. Well, anybody knows, if you're on a farm, if you pick a tomato when it's ripe, by the time it gets to the grocery store, it's not going to be ripe anymore. So they pick it before it's ripe, but they have all of their nutrients when they are ripe. So like, even food now is not the same as it was 100 years ago because it's lacking some of the nutrients that we need. So I tried to do a lot of research on, again, supplements, and because I went vegan for a while. I have recently started working meat back into my diet. I don't do well with pork or beef. It's just really hard on anyone's digestive tract to digest, let alone someone who has a digestive problem. So I really try to focus on just eating like organic, free range chicken. Same thing with turkey, wild caught seafood, a lot of vegetables that are rich in color. Like, color is the big thing. That's where you get a lot of your nutrients from. I'm a big fan of Garden of Life supplements. The man who actually started that company has Crohn's disease, and he wanted a food grade supplement that was gluten-free, that would work with people with IBDs. I believe he since has sold that company now, but they still are very much about organic and food grade vegan supplements. So any of their stuff, I truly would recommend. I mean, I take their multivitamin. I actually do their prenatal one just because it has the higher dose of iron and collagen and folic acid. For me, because of having inflammation, I don't absorb as much as a normal person does. So it's almost like I have to take double the amount or whatnot. I did go on a very high dose prescription strength of iron to get my hemoglobin levels up, and to get my iron levels up as well. I still do take an iron supplement now. There's another brand that I found. It's called Berry, BARI, Melts, MELTS. And that was specifically designed for people from bariatric surgery. And for me, it's easier on my stomach. Sometimes I have a hard time with actual pills and my body just not breaking them down. And I don't want to do the gummies all the time just because of the high sugar content in them. So I have found that berry melts were designed for bariatric patients. So I do their iron, and I also do their B12 supplement. I see an acupuncturist on a regular basis, and she gives me B12 injections as well. So that really helps with your energy levels. And, just because your lab work comes back, like my lab work, I've always been borderline anemic, but I know for me, like where my body is at optimal level, there we go, is, not is needs to be higher.
Mhm.
But per the doctors, I'm in the healthy range. Same thing with my B12, but to me, it's low for what my body needs. So, I would definitely suggest anybody, if they have a chronic illness or whatnot, like get lab work done so you have, something to work with. If you feel like something's off, your body better than my doctors. And I go to Mayo Clinic. It's not like I go to, some rinky dink, like my doctor only deals with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. They don't do with anything else related to the GI tract. But again, they're doctors and they look at, okay, well, this is the standard. You're within the standard, but I feel like crap. So I also have a naturopath doctor, the ND, that I see as well. I see an acupuncturist. I get massage therapy done on a regular basis. That's one to help with the stress, but that also helps with inflammation. I don't think people realize how good that is to get rid of inflammation as well. And I've read a lot of books. He's a little bit on the weird side, but his thought process behind all food, like he uses food as medicine, as medical medium. And he's got books, I think, like Healing the Gut, Detox, but he really talks a lot about like heavy metals and processed foods and chemicals and how our body stores them. And then it's almost like poisoning your body, and why you have the manifestation of later on in life, maybe an autoimmune disease pops up or manifests itself. So I've learned a lot from him, especially with like the food, aspect of things, and what foods are better for you for depending on what disease. Like, and he talks a lot about different diseases. It's not just Crohn's or stomach stuff either. And what works for me might not work for someone else either. So like that's also another issue, especially with these autoimmune diseases. They affect everybody so differently. Like one person, if they just change their diet, they're fine. Whereas like for me, I have to be on medication and I kind of always have symptoms. Like I've never gone an entire week without having some type of Crohn's symptom. Now they're mild, but I've never gone and not had a stomach ache or had my stomach get bloated or, just ran to the bathroom very urgently. That's just not happened since I got sick. And that might be my new normal. I don't know. But I think for people, don't always ask questions, especially, if a doctor diagnoses you and you don't feel like you have that. Listen to your gut. I mean, I know we've talked about this before on the podcast. Like, I know my body, so this isn't right. And if you're not going to address it, get a second opinion, get a third opinion. Again, I see natural and I also see Western medicine, and I take the best from both and use it for my care plan right now.
I would love for you to talk about advocating for yourself, because, one of the things that you mentioned in there was technically your blood work is normal, but that's not enough. So how do we advocate for ourselves without being labeled bitchy or difficult, or she doesn't know what she's talking about? Where's that fine line?
I mean, I think it's also having a good relationship with your medical team. I have, I've been with my doctor now for almost 4 years, and she does listen to me, and I tell her, I'm like, I try not to complain a lot. I don't want to be one of those people that is like, hey, I'm going to the emergency room because I'm in pain. So she respects me enough that like she knows that I'm not like a drug seeker or seeking attention. There's been a couple times where she's like, well, you're within the range, and I've said, I understand that, but I don't feel good. Something's off. can we try something? And, she'd be like, okay, that's fine. So I think, again, having that relationship, like being able to sit down and talk, like I know my first GI doctor, like I barely could sit down and talk to him because it was like a 2-hour wait.
Mm-hmm.
And then, 5 minutes here. And I was like, yeah, I need somebody different. I need somebody that's willing to sit down and talk with me. Like, that's why I loved Mayo. Like my first appointment, my doctor sat down and talked with me for an hour to get my history, to understand me, like what kind of background did I have, because again, I'm a fairly active person. So like my quality of life is very different than someone who is not as active, maybe. And I would say just shop around. If you don't have that, it's okay to say, I need a new care team. I need a different doctor. I feel like sometimes we feel like we're stuck with this doctor, even if we don't like them. Like, no, not they have personalities just like we do. So like if you don't get along, find somebody new. Especially if you have a chronic illness, because you're stuck with this for the rest of your life. So I think that that's a big thing. And I've been very open with my doctor about, yeah, I do see you guys, but I also do alternative things as well. And she's like, you know what? If that works for you, that's awesome. So I think it's just really finding the right team and knowing that you can switch doctors. So if something changes, and you don't like their direction that they're trying to put you in, get a second opinion, get a third opinion, get a fourth opinion. Like, again, this is your body. They don't live in it. They don't know what it's like to be you 24 hours a day. So that would be my advice.
I love that you said care team, and you kind of talked about all the different people that you see. I think that's really important as well, because you never know who might pick up on this one nugget of something that's going on with you that they can then address and work on. So I want people to really hear that it's okay, like you said, to have a naturopath and your GI doctor and your massage therapist. Let's be honest, who doesn't want more massages in their life? Come on.
Right?
Like we all need that. Acupuncture, like you're taking everything and bundling it up to work for you. When you look back to when you were first diagnosed, if you look back before that, were there warning signs, other physical issues with your body that were happening that you just didn't recognize or realize until after you were diagnosed?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I probably should have been more vocal about how many antibiotics I had been on. I was dealing with a sinus infection and I was in a lot of pain. And I think I should have found a different ENT. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm being vocal about, like, it's okay to ask for a second opinion. It's okay to question your doctors, because they aren't the be all to end all when it comes to things. Because I kept telling her something's wrong. And she's like, your CT scan's fine. There's nothing wrong. And then she had someone else look at it and it was like, oh, you have a massive cyst inside your nasal cavity that is infected, which is causing all of this. Plus your septum's deviated. And I'm like, how did you miss this? And I think at that point, the damage was already done to my GI tract from being on all those antibiotics. So I think, again, ask these questions with your doctors. What are the side effects of being on antibiotics for 4 months and 9 different strains that I was on? I think that's one thing that we don't do too, is, again, we think doctors know everything, and it's like we just accept them putting us on something. It's like, ask those questions, like, what are the side effects? Is there long-term stuff? And let you outweigh the good versus the bad, whether you want to be on this or not. And do your research and ask questions. And I think that's really the only thing I would have done differently. Like, maybe had I been on a probiotic, maybe it wouldn't have triggered this, but we don't know. I mean, I think it was just a perfect storm that happened, and here we are at this point. And so I don't really think there was like actual warning signs, because it was literally the day after I got off antibiotics was the day I got sick. So I think the damage was already done at that point. So, you know, again, hindsight's 2020.
Let's talk about research, because we hear the jokes, you know, if you Google your symptoms, it's going to tell you that you're about to die. And sometimes that is true. You know, I had sinus surgery a few years ago as well. I had a deviated septum, and they packed it with the splints. I don't know if you had that.
Yep.
So they packed it with the splints, and they were not very comfortable. So the day before I was going to go get those splints out, I was Googling, what is this going to be like? And every single entry was like, oh my God, this is the worst pain I've ever had. I would have rather been like run over by 3 cars and bashed in the face than have those things taken out. So by the time I got to the doctor, I was freaking out, and I was like, let's just leave them in for the rest of my life. It's fine. And the nurse was like, no, like, it's really not bad. It's really not bad. And I was like, no, everybody on the internet said it was bad, and the internet is true. And when she took them out, it was fine. Like, it was nothing. So we have those experiences, but then there are good information sources on the internet. So I would love for you to talk about some of the sources that you use where you know that you can find legitimate, reliable information, and where other people can go if they don't want to be the me freaking out, you know, for hours and hours about getting these stupid splints taken out of their nose.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, like, it was like a relief. Like, they got it out, and I'm like,
it was amazing.
Like, it felt weird, but I was like, oh, yeah. So that's funny. And I had that surgery twice, actually. I had it once done when I was 21, and then done 4 years ago. So I guess for me, I had a lot of recommendations for people are like, hey, because again, you'll get this like, oh, my cousin's best friend's boyfriend's brother has Crohn's disease, and he cured it by doing this. And like, if you open your mouth and say that to me, I'm already not listening to you anymore. Like, I'm done. Like, I don't care. Don't try to fix me. However, I have a friend named Nikki, and she's the one that was like, hey, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard about him, but I think you'd be really interested in reading a book by Medical Medium. So I looked it up, and I was like, yeah, this could be interesting. So I read his books. I follow him on social stuff, and so by him kind of like tagging other people and other authors or experts in their own field kind of opened up my eyes to more of the natural path world. There's also groups, like I'm in a Crohn's and colitis natural path group on Facebook. I'm in a women's only Crohn's group. I also have celiac. I was diagnosed with that last year, so I'm in a celiac group. And sometimes you have to weed through some of the crap, but a lot of people do share what they've gone through and what has helped them. And again, knowing somebody who has been there and done that and gone through it has maybe it might not work for me, but it did work for someone who has something that I have. So let me try it. And I hate to say it this way, but a lot of it is trial and error. Because again, what works for me might not work for someone else. You know, I have a friend who had COVID, and she lost all of her hair due to having COVID. And I just happened to overhear her conversation. I mean, we're friends now. I didn't know her then. And was like, hey, so, you know, I lost all my hair, not from COVID, but, you know, like, I know what you're going through. And so we have become friends. I have, you know, I gave her my friend who made my wig. She actually has a wig making business to make her wig. Also shared with her, you know, what I did to get my hair healthy again and get myself healthy. And so I think that, again, there is a lot of crap out there, but I think it's also like knowing I think that's also part of the testimony thing. Like, I've been very open about my disease and my diagnosis, and I've had people say, hey, I don't have this, but I was dealing with hair loss because of this, and what did you do? And so that's why I created this document of like the supplements I took, the shampoos that I was using, um, my hair routine that I did, like my hair masks and all of that stuff. And that's why I created it, because I had several people ask me what I was doing, and I was doing progress pictures. And again, it wasn't for me, but I knew I struggled so much with it that if maybe I had somebody in my network that had been posting about something like this, I would have reached out to them in the same way people have reached out to me. So, I think it is embarrassing, but it's also, people go through things. And I think that there's a human element, like, hey, I do know somebody who went through this. Can I connect you with them? If someone says no, then fine. But that would, to me, would be the best advice I have for, if someone is dealing with any kind of chronic illness, and, the research part of it, because it's having to weed through that. And a lot of things with Crohn's, like, there's an ulcerative colitis and Crohn's foundation. There's a lot of information there as well. So like, the information is out there. It's sometimes just kind of weeding through some of it. And, maybe sometimes, like, medical medium, he says some wacky things, and it's like, yeah, man, I'm just not going to listen to that. But he has some very good points too. So it's like, don't take what one person says as gospel either. Take what they say and apply it to you in your own way and what works for you.
So I think every woman, whether she has a chronic illness or not, wants a banging hair routine. So I'm going to have to ask, because I feel like people would be mad if I didn't. What is your hair routine like to have the amazing hair on your head that you now have?
Okay. Yeah. So I take a biotin and collagen supplement daily. I take a multivitamin daily. And I count my protein intake. So that's what I do from the inside out, because that's what our hair is. I mean, it comes from up here. This is not living anymore.
Right.
So a lot of it has to do with being healthy within. But on the outward part of it, I actually don't wash my hair but once a week, like with shampoo.
Same.
Curly hair is very dry. And I learned that, this was before I got sick, that, how drying and more damaging it was for me washing my hair every day. So I condition it. I would say whenever, like, if I take a shower and I'm going to do my hair, if it's down and everything, I always condition it. And I really like, actually, it's a new product line. It's called All About Curls. And they sell it at Sally's. I guess it's their version of Deva Curl, which is sold at your salons and everything. That's stupid expensive. But I really am now focused on because it doesn't have any sulfates, and it's paraben free. So I use, I condition my hair, and then I always put like a serum in it to help lock in the moisture. And I put a little bit of the cream in my hair. I will do a deep condition at least once a month. I try to do it every other week, depending on my travel schedule. But like, I literally will just get my hair wet, put it in, and leave it. Sometimes I'll even go sit outside in the sun for the heat, and leave it in for about 30 to 45 minutes. And then, I'll rinse it out. And I do get it trimmed regularly, to get rid of the split ends. And, I don't straighten my hair. One, because I live in Florida and it's pointless, because today it's like 95 degrees outside. So, and the humidity is like, no. But I don't really do I don't even blow dry my hair. I just let it air dry. I know some people have to or whatnot, but I really try to not do damage to my hair if I can't, or like if I can avoid it.
Mhm.
So that's pretty much my hair routine.
I can totally relate to a lot of that. I also have curly hair naturally. I know you can't see that, but I wash my hair like once a week, sometimes a little longer than that. So for those of you that turned their nose up when Jen said that, it is legit. If you have dry hair, the more you wash it, the angrier it becomes. So you do not.
Frizzy,
Yes,
yes.
it's not pleasant in any way, shape, or form. How much do you attribute to the collagen and biotin? Because I know that's kind of been a hot thing lately for hair, but is it a legit hot thing?
I think so. I definitely think it is. I don't do it as much as I used to, but I used to get even just the collagen in the powdered form, and I would put it
Mhm.
like in my coffee or a smoothie. I feel like my skin and my hair are doing really well now, so I have since kind of cut that out. Um, and it's just hard to travel with that.
Mhm.
But I I do notice a difference. I notice more of a sheen or a glow when I do take it on a regular versus like when I don't. Um, so for me, it works. I'm not going to say it's the gospel, but it works for me.
Have you noticed any other physical benefits from taking some of the vitamins and some of the other things that you're doing? What else has that positively affected for you?
I would definitely say kind of my joints. I mean, I have bad joints to begin with. I actually am getting ready to have shoulder surgery, but that's just because my ligaments are not happy and torn and stuff. But like even just like my knees, I feel like my knees aren't they don't hurt as much. Um, and I definitely notice a difference in my skin for sure. Like my skin is not. I used to feel like my skin was very dry,
Mhm.
and it's not as much anymore. And I know my nails grow very fast. So something is working, maybe it's a combination of all of it. But I definitely think a lot of it has to do with the joints. And I mean, if you think again, if you think about it from a science biological standpoint, like I mean, cartilage has collagen in it.
Mhm.
So like, if you're to me, like that makes sense. So
I concur. So I love it. What advice would you give? I mean, you've given some good tips and tricks to people about several different things, but let's say somebody is struggling and maybe they've been diagnosed, they've just been diagnosed with a chronic illness, or maybe they're just noticing some new issues, some different pains or aches, or their hair is falling out. What advice would you give them? What should they tackle first?
I would go see your doctor. I would get blood work done. I feel like that's the biggest thing, like, and to know where you are right now. That again, that shows your red blood cell count, your hemoglobin count, and your um, if you do a full panel workout, like it tells you what your B12 levels are. I mean, it gives you everything, and you can specifically ask too, like what your minerals and your what we call your micros, not your macros, but like all of that stuff can be seen in your blood. So I that would be my first suggestion to anybody. Um, Also, what's really helped me is I ended up getting a Garmin
Mhm.
Vivo Active last year, and I used a Fitbit before, and it would just show your sleeping habits. Well, there would be days where I wake up and I'm like, okay, it shows that I slept 8 hours, but I feel like I was in a fight. I'm tired.
Mhm.
How did I sleep 8 hours and I feel like this? Well, the Garmin actually registers your stress level. So even if you're sleeping, so like on days that I feel crappy, I go back and look and I'm like, oh, well, I was in heightened state of stress all night. So I didn't get complete sleep. So my body was fighting itself. Um, so to me, that helps me kind of understand, okay, so like I was obviously either in pain or my body was reacting to something. And so moving forward with that. Also, another suggestion too I have is I am a firm believer in medical marijuana. There's a lot of research coming out, especially with it concerning inflammation, not just IBDs, but just inflammation, and how THC is so good for that as opposed to taking over-the-counter medication and pills and all of that kind of stuff. So I also have a medical marijuana doctor as well. So I think that if you're, again, it's a personal opinion, but that's another outlet, and maybe doing some research on that and how that has helped people with, again, different diseases ranging from anxiety, depression, chronic illnesses, cancer, all of it. So again, just doing your research on that as well. So I think that just getting a baseline first and then figuring out, okay, this seems low or something borderline low, figure out, like, ask the questions, how can I get this a little bit higher? Maybe that might be my problem. Just because there's a range, it's like, who came up with that range?
Right.
And is that range my range, or is that just the general population range? But having numbers and having actual physical data will help you figure out a plan for your health moving forward.
I love that advice. Absolutely. And, get your blood work done, do some research, gather your team.
Yes.
Jenn, we're gonna wrap up here momentarily. Of course, we're gonna talk about tattoos before we wrap up. Now, I know you said it was 90 something there. It's not here. I'm still in a sweater. We are recording this in June, so you can't see any of my tattoos, but we both know that we both love tattoos. You've talked a lot about yours already on the podcast, so I just want to hear first your favorite tattoo story that you have.
Okay. Favorite tattoo story. Wow, I feel like there's a lot of them.
Right.
I guess so when I got my Lighthouse one, which is, it's 3 sessions, it's huge, obviously it's my entire back. And I was there the entire day, 2 days getting it done. We did the outlining and then we did the shading. And just being in a tattoo parlor for 6+ hours, you hear a lot of things, and just how they talk to each other, and like, the camaraderie, but then the bickering between the two, between all of them, I think is incredibly interesting. But when I was getting mine done, a couple came in and they're like, we want to get tattoos. And they're like, well, do you guys, like, what do you have? And they're like, no, we just figured we'd look through the book. And I'm like, and we're getting that. All right. So then after they did the tattoo.
I'm so sorry. So we're looking through the book and we're getting matching tattoos?
Yes.
Okay. Continue.
Yep. So they get, I don't even remember what they got, because again, I was face down because we're doing my back. So I'm hearing all of this. And then afterward, my tattoo artist and the guy that owns the shop and everything, they're like, yeah, so over or under, how long you think they're gonna last, and what do you think we're gonna do a cover up for them? And I just thought that was hilarious, because I'm like, obviously this happens all the time. And I know I've talked about this before, but I'm the type of person that, like, I think about my tattoos. Like, it takes me sometimes years to be like, all right, I have this idea, and then I'll execute it. And I came up with the idea with the Lighthouse tattoo back in 15 when my grandfather passed away, and I just got it done in December 21. So like, it was several years. Granted, I was dealing with all this illness stuff, so the tattoos were not on my radar at that point. But I'm just like, how often does that happen? And I kind of want to know, like, that you just walk in, let's get matching tattoos, and I'm like, feel like that's a really bad idea.
Yes. And I am going to need you to get back in touch with this tattoo establishment so that we can
Yes.
find out when they each get theirs covered up. I feel like
Yes, I will work on that.
that's the next part of the story. Most
Yes.
definitely. Well, Jenn, what is next? Now, I know it takes, like you said, you like to plan out your tattoos, and you've talked about a couple different things that you want. So what do you think the next one will be?
I think it's going to be on my foot. I'm kind of thinking more of an Irish theme, to kind of go with my Irish roots.
Mhm.
For those of you that don't know, I am definitely Irish.
Through
The
and
red
through.
hair. My middle name is McKay, which is my grandmother's maiden name. So if that doesn't scream Scotch Irish, I don't know what does. So I kind of want a little more like Celtic. Like I do have one of my tattoos, my sword tattoo does have a Celtic pattern in the handle of it, but I think maybe something more Celtic related, I think is kind of what I'm going through. I've played around with the idea of, I don't know if you've heard of the claddagh ring. I wear one. So maybe something with that incorporated. I don't know, because originally it was going to be Tinkerbell, and now I'm kind of thinking not so much anymore.
Right,
So.
right. I remember we had that conversation, and you were lamenting that it might not be Tinkerbell anymore.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's probably not. So we might have to just go back to the drawing board. But yeah, I definitely think it's gonna be something probably Celtic related.
I love it. Well, Jenn, where can people find you? So if they want some new fitness apparel, if they want to talk to you about what they can do to help their own chronic illness, you are not a doctor, but you can always give out some suggestions of what worked for you. Or if they want to ponder a tattoo for 6 years before getting it, where can they find you?
You can find me on all socials. It's Suck It Up Fitness. And my website is suckitupfitnessapparel.com.
Fantastic. Well, Jenn, as always, you have been amazing. I appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much for sharing what has helped you get through your chronic illness and what other people can do to help themselves.
Oh, you're welcome. I always love being on here.
I hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with Jenn as much as I did. I truly appreciate all the advice she gave on better advocating for ourselves and ways that we can find information from trusted sources. So remember, until next week, you are strong enough, you are worth it. Thank you for listening to the Strong Enough podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform by searching Strong Enough. And on YouTube, we're on the Spear Talk channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Strong Enough Pod. If you have suggestions for an upcoming episode or a future guest, please reach out at strongenoughpod@gmail.com. Remember, you are worth it.